Hello and welcome to Your County. I'm your host, Lynn Turner Fitzgerald. My guests today are Nicole Cromwell and Mike Schieno. Thank you both for being here, first of all.
Sure.
I'm going to have you tell us your official titles because they get kind of long. Nicole, what is yours?
Well, I work for City County Planning, and I'm the zoning coordinator for all the zoned areas in Yellowstone County and the City of Billings.
That's a big job. And Mike?
I work for Yellowstone County, and I'm the junk vehicle director and also the code enforcement officer for Yellowstone County.
All right, thanks. Well, thanks for being here. There's a lot to cover. These are big areas. Mike, I want to start with you, with the junk vehicle law. What is that exactly?
Well, it's what it is when you register your vehicle, you pay a junk vehicle fee.
Yeah.
So that goes to the state of Montana, and that money is used to take care of all the junk vehicles in the state of Montana. So, for instance, we have a yard that's about 7 acres, and all the junk vehicles that are picked up by either the city of Billings or Yellowstone County are stored at the junkyard.
Forever?
So we hold them for at least 30 days.
Okay.
And if the vehicles, if it looks like there's somebody that might pick it up, we can hold them longer. If not, we'll take them out to Pacific to have them crushed.
Well, is the owner notified that their vehicle has been taken there? Do they know?
Yes.
They do.
We do send out certified letters.
Oh, okay.
So,
Okay.
yeah.
So what would constitute you picking up a junk vehicle?
So the city of Billings has a program where they've got volunteers with crime prevention. So about 2 to 3 times a week they go out and tag vehicles that they've received complaints on, that are vehicles that have been stored on the streets for months or a year. And so after they tag them, 5 days later, which is usually once a week, the city will have wreckers go out and pick these vehicles up.
Okay.
And they'll pick up anywhere from 5 to 20 vehicles in a day and bring them out to the Yellowstone County junkyard.
But the owner of the vehicle has that 5 days to remove the car or vehicle themselves, right?
Correct.
Does it apply just to vehicles or other, like campers or motorhomes, things like that?
Well, in the city,
Okay,
in
here's
the
where it gets
city,
complicated.
here's where it gets complicated. Since you don't pay a junk vehicle fee on things that are not cars
Right.
or trucks, then those are handled through the cities using the street for storage. And code enforcement in the city gets involved with tagging those and notifying people that they have to move it off the street. Or if it's on the street, if it's a tow behind camper, it has to be attached to the towing vehicle in order for it to be on the street for any period of time. That includes utility trailers or boats or anything else that
Sure.
people put in the parking lane on the street. So those are handled strictly through the city code enforcement division, and they pay the costs of that towing. Hansers Automotive and Recovery is the vendor for moving those off the street. They have to hold them, of course, for 30 days. And then if nobody claims them in that time, then they have to do a lot of processes to get them ready for a crusher. So, like all the fluids in an RV have to be emptied and dealt with. So
Right.
it's a little more expensive,
Yeah.
Yeah.
but
It
it's
is.
important because we do get quite a few of those complaints every year.
Well, you bring up a good point, and that is the code enforcement or codes that apply to the city of Billings are maybe going to be different from the ones in the county,
Correct.
right?
Yes.
So what is it primarily that you look for, Mike?
So if the complaints I get are usually junk vehicles parked on the streets. I do get some campers and motorhomes too. So if it looks like it's a junk vehicle, and for the county, if it's legally licensed and not a junk vehicle, but it's been parked for a long time, where the city might still remove it, we don't. If
Okay.
it's legally licensed and it doesn't look like a junk vehicle. So Motorhomes, I do everything I can to try to get them to move them, just because we don't have the equipment to move large motorhomes. And if we do, I would have to hire Hansers or another big
Right.
company that has a vehicle that could tow them. So
How big is your area?
our area is, the junkyard is 7 acres. It's a big lot.
Wow.
So we've probably got, I'm thinking right now, probably around 300 vehicles in the yard.
Really?
Yeah.
Is it open? Can people come out and take a look?
No, it's not open
Okay.
to the public.
All
It's, yeah.
But I mean, your enforcement area, how far does that go?
Oh, for Yellowstone County, I go all the way to Custer or all the way out toward Broadview. I have the whole county.
Right. But are the ordinances the same, the restrictions the same all the way to Custer?
As far as junk vehicles,
Really?
they would be the same, yes.
Really?
Yeah.
I noticed on your website there was a photograph of Old Hardin Road. I don't know when it was taken. It was a before and after photograph. And the before had a lot of junk under a billboard, and then it was cleaned up and looked a lot better.
Yeah.
So do you respond only to complaints, or do you go out on your own or have a team that goes out looking for these things?
In Yellowstone County, it is complaint-based.
Okay.
Yeah. So anytime somebody files like a code enforcement complaint, they have to give their name and address. It's right in the ordinance.
When you
So,
call to complain, you give your name and address?
Yeah, they do. We don't take any anonymous complaints.
Okay, okay. Well then, so the person who has the junk vehicle that you're calling about, are they gonna know that you called them in and ratted them out?
Well, if they request,
Oh,
I
really?
have to give that, and that is per our county attorney's
Yeah.
office.
Okay. That could get a little
So-
dicey.
And the thing about it, sometimes people won't file complaints because of that, because they
Right.
don't want to have issues with the neighbors, and
No.
and that does happen.
Yeah, for
So-
sure. Well, now, what is the fine if you just don't remove your junk vehicle?
Well, then then we can have it towed.
Right.
Yeah.
But is there any fine for the owner?
If there could be, if the vehicle is on their property and not on the street, and they have junk vehicles on the property, then we can, under the community decay ordinance, we can give them a 30-day notice to remove them. And if they don't, we can issue a citation, which the citation would be in justice court. And I mean, the maximum penalty could be $500 fine.
Really?
Yeah.
Can they be cited more than once? I mean, if they fail to move on the first citation, can you go back and cite them again?
Well, I would have to show that they've added more junk.
Oh.
I can't cite them for the same violation a second time. So I would have to go to the county attorney and see if we can get an order
Okay.
to either go and clean the property or bring them back to court.
Right. So Nicole, you've been with City County 25 years?
Yes,
Wow. What's changed?
a lot. A lot has changed. In fact, when I started, I was part-time county code enforcement, and that was all the county had. I stayed within the zoning jurisdiction, and there was a separate county junk vehicle director who did the junk vehicle stuff countywide. That changed in about 2003, 2004, when the county said we would much rather have a full-time county code enforcement officer. And so we hired a full-time person. They were in city-county planning still. And then a few years later, the county said, you know, we would like to combine these two, county junk vehicle and county code enforcement, to
Okay.
be a single department division. And then they hired a dual person for that position. And it's been that way ever since. Now, we work very closely together, Mike, Schieno, and the city code enforcement division now, which is now its own separate division. It used to be my job to be city code enforcement supervisor and zoning coordinator. And then in 2020, the city said, we're going to create a separate division and have a full-time manager for that division. And then the public safety mill levy in the city increased the number of officers from 3 to 7 for city code enforcement. So there's a lot more effort in the city right now on code enforcement issues. But Mike and I help each other out all the time, whether it's helping out with enforcement of the county's new marijuana dispensary code that's in zoning, or we have a community decay issue. So the community decay law was a law I worked with the county attorney's office to build and put in place. I think it was 2006 when we adopted the first version of the community decay, which applies countywide, which applies to properties that are really just full of junk, trash, debris, just really bad for the adjacent property owners.
Oh, yeah.
And working through the growing pains of that ordinance. So, and then Mike is still working on community decay all across the county. So.
It sounds like it might get a little personal from time to time. I mean, that's their stuff, right?
Exactly.
Yes.
All right, tell me about that.
You tell somebody they've got to either remove their stuff, which we think is junk. It does get personal, and people don't want to get rid of a lot of that. So I've got to come in and say, either you clean it up, you get 30 days, and we can give them extensions, which we do, to give them more time to do it. If not, you could receive a citation.
Yeah.
Or the other option is they would have to put up shielding to hide it from public view.
And that probably involves some zoning as well, doesn't it? For fencing or shielding or anything like that?
Sometimes.
Yeah, sometimes it can. Yeah, sometimes, right?
So the community decay ordinance, what, broad brush, what is that?
Well, it was an effort to ensure that places either in zoning or outside zoning, because a lot of Yellowstone County is not zoned, an effort to expand it beyond just junk vehicles to say, if you're never going to take your trash to the landfill or hire somebody to take your trash to the landfill, we don't want that activity to create blight out in the county.
Well, and not sanitary conditions as well. I mean, wouldn't that attract a lot of vermin?
Yeah.
Right? Scavengers and cats and dogs and just
rats, mice.
So
the smell for the neighbors and everything else that goes with it.
Right. So that's why the community decay law, and it's based on public nuisance. So if it's just a private nuisance, like your neighbor has a few cans of or bags of garbage in their backyard, that's not community decay. Community decay is something that's visible, that is extensive, is not just a few bags of garbage.
It's extreme.
It's extreme.
Yeah.
Right.
And we have had some extreme cases that we've worked together.
And how do you resolve those? I mean, do you have the ability to, I mean, you can force them or try to force them to clean it up. If they don't, can the county go in and just take everything?
With a court order.
With a court order, okay.
With the court order.
Yeah, you have to have the right to enter the property and take the trash and debris and junk that's outside.
Right.
Yeah.
How long does that take to get a court order? I mean,
Sometimes
that sounds
years.
like, really?
Sometimes years.
Why?
Generally, and this is the way we approach it, is that when you first begin that relationship, and it is a relationship that you're starting with the property owner, you need to listen, to understand what's going on. and then figure out how to help them get beyond barriers to cleaning up.
Right,
So it's not necessarily punitive. You're really trying to help.
Right.
right.
Okay.
Yeah. And sometimes you never build that trust, you never get beyond those barriers, and that's when you go to the county attorney and say, here's a case I've been working on for 6 months, I'm not making any progress, here's what I've done, here's all the letters I've sent, here's all the conversations we've had. Can you write us a complaint so we can bring this in front of a judge?
Mm-hmm.
So that's, and then once it gets in front of a judge, then there's due process, right? You have to give that person their day in court. And sometimes that could take months as well. We urge people to be patient, that we haven't forgotten that sometimes there's a lot of things on our plate, but we're steadily working towards compliance.
Yeah, and you have to work within the system.
Right.
And those things do get backed up. I mean,
They do.
everything does.
Mm-hmm.
Well, we're in a system with the criminal system that we
Right.
have, so we're
Right.
part of that.
But now they're adding new judges, so that might help?
It will help a little, I'm
Okay.
sure.
Yeah.
And all of these actions typically are not criminal, they're civil actions.
Right, right.
So there's no jail that's involved typically. I mean, some of the zoning violations could be charged as misdemeanors. It could be, $500 fine, but typically in the county, none of those include jail terms. So they're kind of lower level.
Yeah.
And the court system, and they in district court, they deal with everything from felonies to murder and all kinds of things. So,
Right.
Well, I'm curious though, Mike. I'm thinking in the county, there's more agricultural land, and if a person has, say, junk or whatever, far back on their property, so it's not necessarily. I mean, does that matter? The visibility aspect of it, or who it impacts? I mean, I'm just thinking agricultural land. They could have old farm machinery that.
mm-hmm.
Right.
Maybe it's decorative. I mean, who knows?
And the ordinance deals with that.
Okay.
We don't go after any farm or ranching issues.
Okay.
If somebody were to file a complaint because they've got old tractors, that's not a violation of our ordinance. So
Right.
they made that clear that we won't go after farmer or ranchers.
Well, let's talk
any
about
type of
the
agriculture.
marijuana dispensaries, because they started in the city limits. Started with medicinal, right?
Mm-hmm.
How long ago was that? 11?
2010, 2011.
Okay, and limits on a lot of things for dispensaries
Right.
for the city of Billings. What were some of the highlights of that?
In the beginning stages,
Yeah.
the highlights were that we got over 100 applications for home occupations that were medicinal.
What does that mean, a home occupation?
Like you're working out of your house.
Oh, your dispensary's in the living room.
Right.
Oh, gotcha.
So,
Was that legal?
and at the time, the city had no regulation
Yeah.
about it, so we all had to rely on the state law, and the state law said it was allowed. And so the only thing we could do was just keep inspecting to make sure they weren't putting up signs, that they weren't having more than 4 vehicles to the
Oh, yeah.
location an hour, which are just standard home occupation rules.
Were there restrictions about being near schools or churches, like liquor licenses?
No, not at
No.
the time. Not
Okay.
at the time. I mean,
Okay.
there was the federal law, which had the drug-free school zones,
Right.
which I think has now been extinguished, or it's not really enforceable anymore. But we had all that, and then the city council took a step and said, okay, moratorium. We're not issuing any more home occupation licenses for medical dispensaries. And then they started moving into commercial properties. And then the Montana legislature put in place Senate Bill 423 that said Yes, we said medical dispensaries are okay, and here are the limitations. You can only have 3 patients. You can only have this much. You can only produce this much marijuana. You can only, there were a lot of limitations that went in effect. So basically, that wiped out all the commercial property, dispensaries.
Yeah.
They had to close. Everybody who was a home occupation said, I can't make a living on 3 patients.
3 patients, yeah.
So a lot of that went away. And then we had 2 ballot initiatives that one kind of overturned a lot of what was in Senate Bill 423, which wasn't already overturned by the courts.
Okay.
And then we had the recreational ballot initiative in 2020. So it created, the business model that was created in Montana was something new to Montana, and it kind of evolved over that 10-year period. And some places were more ready for it than others.
Some communities, you mean, or individuals?
Communities, cities, or counties.
Okay.
And then they came up with a legislative bill that implemented the ballot that was approved. And basically, it said, if you're in a county that voted to approve it, then here are the rules and what you can do locally. If you were in a county that didn't approve the ballot, you don't have to allow anything. You can say no to everything.
Really?
Yeah.
It wasn't passed statewide?
It was passed statewide, but the county by county votes mattered when they built this new statute.
Were there any counties who stepped out and said, we don't want it?
Yes.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
But Yellowstone County said, okay, bring it.
Well, the ballot initiative passed here by a majority.
Okay.
Right.
So,
Oh, okay.
right. So one of the things that the state law allowed was the city to restrict it, to say no recreation. We can only do medicinal dispensaries. And that's what happened. The city adopted rules and ordinances that said only medicinal dispensaries and only a certain size of growing operations and only. So it's very, very limited in the city
But they
limits.
lifted the 3-patient
Oh yeah,
max.
that was
That's
gone.
gone, okay.
That's gone.
That's gone.
In the county didn't have any rules except for an ordinance that was passed in 2011 by the county attorney's office that applied countywide that really had no relationship with the current ballot language or the new state law in 2021. So the county said, oops, we need to figure something out here.
Yeah.
Because at the time, that's where all the dispensaries for medicinal and recreational were being located in the county.
Yeah.
And we had no zoning rules in place. We had no county rules in place. And so they put a moratorium in place in 2021. And we spent 2 years studying it, studying the issue, looking at all different types of regulatory schemes and what worked and what didn't work. And finally, in 2023, we passed the final version of that ordinance, and now everybody can, the county allows recreational and medical, allows dispensaries in certain commercial zone districts. There are minimum separation distances between dispensaries and churches, schools, parks with playgrounds, things like that.
Just in the county?
Just in the county,
But not in the city?
not in the city.
Why? I mean, why don't they just have one zone for everybody, one rule?
Well, the city has different goals than the county does as far as zoning. I mean, they're intended to protect the public health, welfare,
Right,
and safety,
sure.
but the county has a much different type of land use.
Right.
Lots of agricultural land, some kind of small towns, although Lockwood wouldn't call itself a small town.
Right.
And, you know, parts of other populated areas of the county,
Yeah.
like Shepherd or Ballantyne, they have all kind of a small town flavor, whereas the city of Billings very urban and has very different needs for land use regulations.
True, yeah, that's all true. Well, we're just about out of time, but I have another question. So, on the marijuana in the county, how much can you grow in the county versus how much can you grow in the city? Is it the same?
Some of the grows in the county, I think, probably 500 plus. There's some huge grows.
Right.
Is that
So there's
plants? Is that
not-
per plant?
Yes.
500
yeah,
plants.
I've heard that. Now, I've only seen one operation, but
Oh, okay.
there's some of them that have a lot of plants, yeah. And of course, the state regulates that, and I'm not sure if there's a number,
A limit, a top,
a limit of how many plants they can have. but-
Okay,
Right. They limit it based on what they call tiers.
okay,
So you start at tier 1, which is a very small, what they call canopy coverage, all the way up to, I think, tier 7 or 8,
okay.
which is a very large operation,
Yeah.
like
Right,
Mike is talking
right,
about. I think in the city, we allow up to a tier 4. But that's it. So, and
You
it's
guys are
all,
you're gonna have to come back.
Right.
Because we're just not done with this conversation, but we are at
it's
the
a,
time.
it's a deep well.
It is, but I'm wondering if people are interested, can they go online and find these rules? Where would they look?
Well, for all county zoning, we have published on our webpage under the City of Billings on planning, zoning information. You just click on the link to Yellowstone County zoning and it opens up the whole code for you. It's bookmarked so you can look for whatever issue
Okay.
you're looking for.
Okay.
It's also available on your property tax page,
Okay.
published by the treasurer under jurisdictional information. There's a direct link in there to Yellowstone County zoning regulations.
All right. Thanks, both of you, for being
Sure.
here. I appreciate it. Seriously, you are going to have to come back because we didn't get everything covered here. Thanks again. And thank you for joining us on Your County. I'm Lynn Turner Fitzgerald. We'll see you next time.